There is a plant growing wild along North American roadsides right now that produces more food per acre than potatoes, survives winters that kill wheat, and never needs replanting. Once in the ground, it returns every year on its own. For centuries, it was humanity's greatest food insurance policy. Then, not because it failed us, but because it couldn't be controlled, we walked away from it. This is the story of the sunchoke. When French explorer Samuel de Champlain landed on the Massachusetts coast in 1605, the Algonquin people fed him from a feast that included a knobby, unfamiliar root they called the sun root. He tasted it, compared it favorably to the artichoke back home, and loaded his ship with tubers. He had no idea what he was bringing back to a starving continent. Native Americans had known this plant's value for generations. The Iroquois told stories of it, how the first sunchokes grew from the feet of Earthwoman after she died giving birth to creation itself. A yasai, crop born from sacrifice. The plant grows 8 to 10 feet tall, blooming with yellow sunflowers, but its real gift is hidden underground. Knobby tubers packed with a carbohydrate called inulin that stores energy slowly, feeds communities steadily, and never spikes blood sugar. The underground root network spreads like veins through soil. Plant a few tubers once and the colony feeds a family indefinitely. Lewis and Clark learned this firsthand in 1805, nearly starving in the Dakotas until Sacagawea located mouse caches filled with sunchokes and roasted them over fire. The tubers could be eaten raw, crisp like water chestnuts, or boiled soft, or dried into flour for winter storage. They waited patiently in frozen ground until hungry hands came looking. The numbers tell the story in plain terms. A single plant yields 3 to 6 pounds of food. Per acre, sunchoke production reaches around 64,000 calories without irrigation. Potatoes under ideal conditions with irrigation reach roughly 53,000. In cold climates, the gap widens further. When Champlain's ship returned to France, he arrived at exactly the right moment. European soils were depleted. Famine struck regularly. The potato, which would eventually save millions, was still feared by many who believed it caused leprosy. The sunchoke had no such reputation. It spread across France, Italy, and beyond with remarkable speed. Peasants grew it without fertilizer or care. Livestock ate it. It required nothing and gave back everything. The French called it topinambour. The Italians named it girasole, sunflower, which English tongues gradually mangled into Jerusalem, giving us the misleading name Jerusalem artichoke that confused everyone for centuries. But cracks appeared in the relationship. The tubers were irregular, difficult to mechanize, quick to spoil after harvest. The potato was smoother, storable for months, and fit neatly into Europe's growing warehouse economy. Crops that last in storage can be taxed. Crops that rot quickly are harder to control. By the 1700s, the potato had won the continent. The sunchoke was demoted, food for the poor, feed for animals, a weed growing in forgotten corners. In North America, settlers called it exactly that, a weed. They preferred crops that required annual seed purchases, crops that fit into systems of commerce and control. The sunchoke simply persisted in ditches and roadsides, unwanted, waiting. Then came the wars. During World War I, Germany was cut off by Allied blockades. The winter of 1916 became known as the turnip winter. Civilians eating livestock feed because the potato supply had collapsed. Thousands died. In forgotten fields, sunchokes grew wild and beyond reach of any blockade, feeding whoever was desperate enough to find them. World War II was worse. After Nazi forces occupied France in 1940, roughly 80% of French food was redirected to German soldiers. What remained for French families were the scraps. Sunchokes, rutabagas, things previously considered pig feed. For nearly 4 years, millions survived on topinambour they had never bothered to cook before. Children stayed alive because of a plant their grandparents had forgotten. In the Netherlands, the winter of 1944 killed 22,000 people from starvation. Emergency government publications listed wild edibles, tulip bulbs, foraged greens, sunchokes. Mothers dug frozen soil bare-handed looking for buried tubers. And then, peace came. The generation that survived refused to touch them again. Sunchokes became a symbol of the worst years humanity had ever produced. Occupation, humiliation, hunger. In French households, grandparents who had outlasted the war would not allow them on the table. The vegetable that had literally kept children breathing became psychologically unbearable. It vanished from markets and cookbooks across an entire continent. The plant, of course, kept growing. It didn't need anyone's blessing. The nutritional profile that made it a survival food makes it genuinely remarkable in modern terms, too. Around 73 calories per 100 grams, meaningful amounts of protein, potassium levels higher than bananas, plus iron, copper, magnesium, and B vitamins. The inulin, 50 to 60% of its dry weight, passes through the stomach undigested and feeds beneficial gut bacteria in the colon. Studies linked regular consumption to reduced constipation, improved immune response, better mineral absorption, and potentially protective effects against certain cancers. Unlike potatoes, sunchokes don't spike blood sugar. Diabetics in the 1980s reported significantly reduced insulin needs after incorporating them into their daily diet. The plant also heals degraded land. Its deep roots break up compacted soil. It tolerates drought, poor conditions, and temperatures as low as -30 degrees Celsius. Where annual crops fail, sunchokes persist. The modern revival came from an unlikely source. A California produce wholesaler named Frida Kaplan, who stared at a basket of dusty, unlabeled tubers in the 1960s and saw potential buried under a terrible name. Jerusalem artichoke meant nothing to American grocery shoppers. She rebranded them as sunchokes, packaged them cleanly, and included recipes. Sales jumped 600%. Chefs noticed. High-end San Francisco restaurants began serving sunchoke soup, roasted preparations, silky purees. In the 1980s, Farm Crisis America experimented with sunchokes as a solution for struggling Midwest farmers. High yields, perennial returns, ethanol potential from fermented inulin. The economics never worked out. No processing infrastructure existed. But the idea survived in permaculture circles and home gardens, where the plant's refusal to die became its defining virtue. Today, climate scientists studying food security for marginal lands keep returning to sunchokes. The crops currently feeding 8 billion people were bred for stable conditions. Those conditions are ending. Sunchokes were built for instability, drought, cold, degraded soil, unpredictability. They have been quietly ready for this moment for 4 centuries. So why aren't they everywhere? Industrial agriculture demands crops that ripen on uniform schedules, harvest cleanly by machine, ship without bruising, and sit in warehouses for months. Sunchokes refuse all of these requirements. They mature inconsistently. Standard potato harvesters lose half the tubers in the soil. They spoil within weeks. And the inulin, the nutritional superpower, causes significant digestive discomfort in people whose gut bacteria haven't adapted to it. This is manageable. Longer cooking converts inulin to fructose. Small amounts taken regularly allow adaptation. But modern food systems have no patience for adaptation curves. More fundamentally, the sunchoke cannot be owned. It spreads underground on its own, requires no purchased seed, no proprietary inputs, no corporate approval. A crop that grows without asking permission is called invasive. A crop that feeds communities without middlemen is called primitive. The pattern is not accidental. It's the same story as amaranth suppressed by conquistadors, native legumes replaced by machine-friendly monocultures, and medicinal plants displaced by patented pharmaceuticals. Crops that enable food sovereignty get systematically erased, not because they fail, because they succeed too freely. Somewhere near you right now, sunchokes are probably growing in a ditch or field edge, unnoticed and untended. That patch is the living inheritance of Algonquin farmers, French peasants, Dutch mothers digging frozen ground, and every generation that kept this plant alive by desperation or stubbornness. Plant 3 tubers this autumn. By spring, you will have 30. The knowledge is that simple. The abundance was always here, already in the soil, free to anyone willing to dig. We didn't lose the sunchoke. We just stopped paying attention, and unlike us, it never stopped waiting.